Waymo just added a massive new feature that's going to increase the popularity of it by an insane amount. And that is this. Waymo is now offering teen accounts for the driverless rides. This is a big deal, a way bigger deal than you think, and I'll talk about why throughout this video. But as you can see here, the main kind of brief synopsis or key points of this whole video is basically that is now offering accounts for teens ages 14 to 17 in Phoenix. This will be spreading to California and potentially other areas. Like right now, Waymo is now operating in Atlanta, Georgia. It's probably going to spread there. They're also now doing testing in New York City and now Philadelphia. So Waymo's spreading surprisingly pretty quick, or maybe not surprisingly, depending on how you look at it. Going here, you can see that now they're going to be offering accounts for teens ages 14 to 17. And this is a big thing. The parents in Phoenix can use their Waymo accounts to invite their teen into the program, pairing them together. So it's not like it's a whole separate thing. The parents kind of have to invite them. And I think this does create a huge element of safety, of course. Once their account is activated, teens can hail the fully autonomous rides. Previously, users required, back in the day or before this, they were required to be at least 18 or older. But as you can imagine, they do want to expand as much as they can. And in addition, they are now offering, especially for this feature, specifically trained ride support agents. So in case you didn't know, when it comes to a Waymo, they can't hear what you say. I mean, that's debatable. We'll talk about that maybe at some point in a different video, but they can see what you're doing. And the microphone's muted, so they can't hear you when you're in that Waymo. But if something happens, they could turn on the microphone and have a full conversation with you. So in this case, when it comes to these specific teen rides, they have specifically trained ride support agents during the rides hailed by teens and loop in parents if needed. So again, this adds a whole other aspect of safety, especially with the fact that teens can also share their trip status with their parents for real-time updates on their progress, and parents receive all ride receipts. Going down here, and there's a big thing that they're going to expand in California at some point. Like I said, I mean, this is a very common feature that different apps have kind of looked at when it comes to having like teen versions of them in order to increase safety. You know, if you look at Uber, because I remember as a former Uber driver, it was always kind of a tricky thing. If you want to pick up somebody and you find out they're 16 and their parents are not there, it's a bit of a gray area, right? And a lot of Uber drivers and Lyft drivers actually avoided picking up teens. Where if they pulled up and it was a teenager and there was no parent or guardian available, they're like, hey, sorry, I'm canceling the ride, not with the risk, right? And going down here, you can see, like I just said, this expansion follows a similar move by Uber, which launched teen accounts in 2023. And in addition, Waymo, which has partnerships with Uber in multiple markets, said it may consider enabling access for teens through our network partners in the future. And this is one move, just one of many that Waymo is doing to significantly get bigger and bigger. You know, like I said in numerous videos, they're doing about 250,000 rides a week across Los Angeles, Phoenix, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Austin. They're looking to go into Miami and Washington, D.C. in 2026. And now they're also testing in New York City, as you can see. And they're making the first step towards potentially cracking the largest U.S. city, New York, when it comes to all this kind of stuff that they're kind of divulging into, could be the next city. And now, they didn't mention this in this article, but this is just super new. This happened like today or yesterday or 2 days ago. And they're also doing testing and layouts in Philadelphia. Now, here's why this is such a big deal, and that is the logistics of a Waymo. Now, as you can imagine, when it comes to kids, like say 14 to 17, teenagers basically, the big thing, if you think about the way they're going to be getting around, like say with a rideshare, Uber, Lyft, or Waymo doesn't matter, is typically like say maybe to and from school, like say they have to stay after school and they have to go home. As you can imagine, one tricky thing about school, and this is very important for this video, this is why I do a lot of these update videos, especially for my Uber and Lyft drivers, because this is going to be a bigger thing than you think, because the tricky thing about being a parent when it comes to having kids is typically, as we probably all know, 9 to 5 is most people's jobs. Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That's very cliche. But most schools get out around 2, 3 p.m. So you have a couple hour lag. I think there actually is like a term for it. I remember learning it in psychology. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a term for it where, like say, school gets out, the parents haven't really got out of work yet. And then what kids do during that time can be kind of vague. Some people just do sports. Some people maybe say after school or whatever. Some people go straight home and just do whatever. It does depend. But there is that couple hour window that parents are like, shoot, what do I do? And this is why it causes a lot of issue for parents just in general. And so being able to, like, say, have your kid immediately go home, yes, they can take the bus. Yes, they can do other means of transportation. But being able to get around when they're not there, or let's say it's a Friday night and they want to go to their friend's place, getting an Uber, Lyft, or Waymo is very, very convenient. And this is something I can see a lot of parents, of course, loving because they're like, hey, I don't have to drive my son or daughter to and from this one thing, this one activity. Maybe I'm not around, and as you can imagine, being a teenager, you don't have the full freedom yet than an adult does. Here's the big kind of positive, I will say that, positive aspect about this, which also makes this a bit tricky for Uber and Lyft drivers. And I've said before that Waymo is something that should be on your radar, especially if you're in these cities, LA, San Francisco, Austin, and Phoenix. You should definitely be aware of Waymo. You probably know about it by now, of course, but then also Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York. It's spreading a lot. And this is a big thing. The advantages of the Waymo. There's a lot of advantages to a Waymo compared to an Uber Lyft. Waymo's typically, when it comes to accidents, way less injuries related to those accidents, and a lot more. But the biggest thing is there's no human driver. And I think for a lot of parents, what they're saying and the way they're going to view this is they're saying, okay, like obviously this is just in Phoenix right now. Just rolling out in Phoenix. They're definitely bringing this to California because Uber already did this too. I think for a parent, they said, okay, would we rather trust a human driver to bring our son or daughter from, let's say, school back home or to their friend's place or to whatever? Or would we trust someone not being in the car? They have full privacy. Now, I can see some parents going either way. I can see some parents saying, you know what? I'd rather trust a human driver. God forbid someone tries to break into the car. So God forbid something happens. You have a figure there to protect them just in case, God forbid. On the other end, we have all heard tons of reports about things like physical assault, sexual assault, and a lot more with Uber and Lyft drivers. And so I could see a lot of parents on the other end saying, you know what? It's a Friday night. My son or daughter is going to go to their friend's place for a sleepover at 9 p.m., for example. I don't trust that a human could drive them there. And with all these reports I hear about, with all these stories I hear about, I just don't trust it. I'd much rather just get a Waymo for them. That way I don't have to deal about a whole other aspect of security and a whole other aspect of safety. And again, you could argue this on both sides. And I do think that's one unique issue that has been brought up a lot with Lyft and Uber. And I want to say this. If you look at the statistics, and I have talked about this, it is very, very rare. Like the chance of your Uber or Lyft driver attacking you is unbelievably rare. It's like I don't know what it is exactly, to be honest, but something like 0.1% or 0.001% of rides. It's very, very, very rare, but it can still happen. And I can see a lot of parents just in the name of safety saying, you know what, I don't want to have to worry about my son or daughter as a teenager, getting into an Uber or Lyft with someone I don't know. The Waymo is going to be there for them. And I think this is also a big reason why too, not even just with the teen accounts like we're talking about here, but I've said before in other videos, they just did a study and they found that Waymos are typically more expensive than Ubers and Lyfts. Not always, in my experience. Sometimes it's, I think 30 or 40% of the time, Waymo's actually cheaper. But overall though, I guess for most people or in general, Waymos are typically more expensive than Ubers and Lyfts. However, they found that people are still willing to spend more money to get into Waymo. And I do think there's some reasons why to that. It could just be the privacy. It could be the cleanliness of it, that typically Waymos are very kept well cleaned by Alphabet, again, owned by Google. There's a lot of other advantages to a Waymo, but I think a big one is it does give you this kind of peace of mind, like, okay, I don't have to worry about potentially another human attacking me. Like, say it's a Friday night at 2 or 3 a.m. I've had some of my girlfriends even tell me, like, hey, Mark, it's 2 or 3 a.m. If I'm super, super drunk, I don't mind spending an extra $10 to take a Waymo as opposed to an Uber or Lyft, because there's one less thing I have to worry about. If, like, say I'm in the car and, like, say I'm, like, fading and I'm tired and I'm just, like, not in the best state of mind, I don't have to worry about potentially the driver doing X, Y, or Z. And then when you bring that to teenagers, very young teenagers, that adds, again, a whole nother level. Now, granted, this is something that they're starting to roll out. I am kind of curious to see how people adopt this landscape. But when you look at, like, say, the whole Uber aspect of Uber teens that teens now can take Ubers that Uber did adopt created a couple years ago. I think that was a good step in the right direction. Because again, like I said earlier in this video, I remember driving, and when you had someone, was under 18 in the car or was clearly very young and there was no parental guardian, it was a bit scary. It was this kind of vague thing of like, shoot, do I drive them or not? There was only one time where I had this actually happen to me. Only one time for me. I picked up people out of high school, and I kind of should have known because the pickup location was out of high school. I'm like, okay, well, you never know. Could be a teacher. It could be somebody who lives near the high school and they thought that'd be the best pickup location. Tough to say. 3 girls got in, so I'm already a bit nervous, as you can imagine. Like, I'm a guy, obviously a grown adult, picking up 3 teenage girls. I don't know if they were, it's tough to say. Maybe they're sophomores, juniors, seniors. I don't know. They were teens. I don't know. They were young, right? And I remember being a bit nervous, being like, shoot, should I cancel the ride? This seems kind of weird. Like, they're clearly under 18. Clearly under 18. This is also in 2015. This is 10 years ago. So this is in 2015. And during that time, this is when Uber and Lyft started to become more popular. It was vague. There wasn't really a full-on statement yet being like, you can or you can't when it comes to people being under 18. So I was like, shoot, I don't know. Should I cancel the ride? They're walking towards the car. It's 3 of them. And I was like, you know what? I'll just do the ride. I think I should be okay type thing. Dropped them off. Luckily, no issue. They're actually super nice. They actually tipped me as well in cash, which is rare. So I was like, oh, all right. Very, very nice. Super cool. They tipped me in cash. Okay, cool, right? But you never know. There's been a lot of interesting stories that Uber and Lyft drivers have had where someone young is walking in the car and they're like, no, and they drive off, right? That's why Uber, of course, made this whole Uber for Kids option. But with Waymo, if you think about it, yes, I think there should be a Waymo for Kids option, as I have, with better support staff more specifically trained in this arena, right, just for teens. I think that's a great idea on Waymo's part. Also, being able to share your location with your parents. Your parents can kind of track everything. And you could argue the privacy of that. Like, I know some kids who are 14 or 15 might be like, oh, I don't want my parent to see where I am at all times, but that's really a whole other subject for a whole other video. I'm not a parent. Oh, excuse me. My voice is a bit not the best today. But, I could see the arguments on both sides of that. But I think the big thing with the Waymo, at the end of the day with this, is Waymo's getting more popular. And I've just talked about that in so many videos. Waymo's getting way more popular, and it's growing incredibly rapidly. It's not that weird at all now in LA to see a Waymo. Everybody knows about it. Everyone's, at this point, I feel like most people have taken them, right? It's not that weird anymore. And Waymo's continue to roll out more and more features. And this is one that, like I said, right in the beginning of this video, may not seem like a big deal, but I think it is, because for people who are very young, like say teenagers, getting into an Uber by themselves, even though there's all these security protocols and safety protocols and different protocols put into place to make sure the parents know what's going on, their location, blah, 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 blah. I think for most parents and a lot of parents, they're still worried, well, hey, my son or daughter is still in the car, a moving vehicle with a person that I don't know. With a Waymo, that whole other person aspect is eliminated, which I could see a lot more parents immediately taking Waymos. I would not be surprised if in Phoenix, and maybe when this rolls out to other areas, that if they did, like, say, a study, which we'll see if they do, if they look at like Uber for teens versus Waymo for teens, I would not be surprised if this almost dominates the teen market regarding ride shares. Because you're like, hey, I don't know about another driver in the car or another adult. God forbid what could happen. I don't want to roll the dice. Yeah, it's unbelievably rare, but it's still possible. I'm going to rather get a Waymo for my son or daughter and be as safe as possible.